Good morning, everybody. We are live from the birdhouse. It's Saturday, October 15th, and today I'm giving you guys an update on some of the birds people have been reporting in their backyards, and then while they're out and about hiking or going out towards the water to see some of this waterfowl migration that's going on right now. Another thing of note, today is our last plant sale of the year with Michael Haynen. So he is here today at the store now until usually around 3 or 4 o'clock. Today is the sale where just about everything is $1. So you can get some really, really good deals on plants. He has a ton of things here. So pop in and see what kind of things he has. And next Saturday, we have Birds of Prey from Wild Wings that are going to be here. So that's always a lot of fun. So check that out. That is on October 22nd, and on the last Saturday of the 29th, we'll have our jigsaw puzzle swap again, and that's been super popular, so you can mark your calendars with that. That is also going on. So as usual, we love to know who's on and what kind of things you are seeing. If you're on, you can say hi in the comments. If you have any questions, you can throw those in there as well. And we'd love to know what kind of things you're seeing in your yard, at your feeders. We've had some reports of some new and kind of different birds flowing through the area. So we'd love to hear what you are seeing. You can post those in the comments as well. But let's get started here. First, I thought I would start with this photo that was sent in by Karen because it's not just birds that people are reporting in their yards, but they get all kinds of different things, including deer. And as the weather gets cooler and cooler, we tend to get more and more reports of deer coming to feeders. So Karen says, not a bird, but a beautiful visitor to the bird feeders nonetheless. So here's a deer coming to feeders. We get reports of fox and raccoons, of course, and squirrels, a possum, all kinds of things, flying squirrels coming to feeders. So you never know what you'll find out there by your feeders. And here's a beautiful deer photo sent in by Karen, who had that as a visitor. So you might have noticed more blue jays at your feeders. A lot of people are reporting blue jays coming to their feeders. Here's a photo sent in by Mark who says, blue jay on the go with its snack. It looks like it has an acorn there. If you are trying to attract more blue jays, the best thing you can do is put out some kind of peanuts. They love peanuts, especially peanuts in the shell. So something like this, the blue jays absolutely love. So they will come to this quite readily. It's kind of amazing. As soon as you put them in the feeder, they know and they show up. And if you do it at the same time every day, they tend to show up. And if you forget on a day, they will let you know. They'll squawk at you. There's different types of feeders for peanuts in the shell. I like these that are they're almost like a hopper style feeder where they've got the larger perches on them as well, which gives them some nice perching room. Because they are such a large bird, they do need some more room in order to fit on the feeder. So it makes this a peanut feeder. So this is for peanuts in the shell. It's got mesh on it, but it's a wide mesh so that they can pull the peanuts out of here and they can perch on these large perches. So this is a really good one. I like this. It's also made of recycled plastic, so it's super easy to clean. So you don't have to worry about it decomposing or anything like that. So that's a good one. And then here's another style, kind of same idea, but it doesn't have the wire mesh on it. It's plexiglass. And there are, again, some larger holes here, and they will just pull the peanuts out of there. It's, again, made of recycled plastic, and it has the larger perches on it. This one's a little bit bigger, too, so it holds more peanuts. So different styles of feeders for the peanuts in the shell. And blue jays will also eat the peanut pickouts, or the insides of the peanuts, and they look like this. If you feed peanuts, you probably know that you get a really good diversity of birds with them. We do have them in some of our blends as well, like our chickadee blend, which is super popular. So blue jays love the peanuts. Of course, the woodpeckers do. Nuthatches, chickadees, titmice, they all really, really love those peanut pickouts. And you can mix that in with a seed you might already have and just have it in your general tube feeder or your hopper feeder, or you can get a special peanut feeder. And this is a new one we just got in. Really, really simple. And it is another wire mesh style feeder. There's no perches on it, you'll see. And the reason for that is the birds can just cling onto the side of it. So, for example, the woodpeckers and the nuthatches, they don't need perches. They can just cling onto the side of the feeder and peck out the little pieces and pull it out. So this is a really simple way to feed peanut pickouts. It's inexpensive. It's only $31.95. So we just got this in. We've got some that are a little bit bigger. We've got some that have bases that pop out. So this is a simple one though. So that is a peanut feeder, and the blue jays and nuthatches and chickadees and all that kind of stuff, they'll all love that kind of thing. You do want to make sure that it's in a place where squirrels can't get to it, if possible, because the squirrels will absolutely feed from it. And we do actually have a squirrel-proof peanut feeder if you're looking for one of those by the Squirrel Buster company. So speaking of birds that love peanuts, titmice, people have been reporting a lot of the tufted. And here's a photo that was sent in by Bob. He says, I have many tufted titmice in the yard, and we've been getting lots of reports about them. It's funny how things kind of ebb and flow, but a lot of people are reporting tufted titmice in their yard in larger numbers than usual. And the tufted titmice love the peanuts. They really like the peanut pickouts, but they'll come to a sunflower seed feeder. Any kind of feeder that has sunflower seeds in it is good for the tufted titmouse. So here's that little guy right there. Goldfinches. So goldfinches are definitely around. They are here all winter long, but they're just not that bright gold. And here's a photo, again, sent in by Bob. He says, the goldfinch is still showing hints of summer plumage, but almost all gone. So you can see a little bit of that yellow that's still there, but they're really a drab, kind of an olive color over the winter. And they love the Niger seed. So any kind of Niger feeder is ideal for them. I've been feeding them in my yard this Finch Favorite blend, which they absolutely love. This is a combination of the Niger seed and the sunflower hearts. It's ground up sunflower hearts. And not only do I get the goldfinches coming to it, I get chickadees, I get a downy woodpecker here and there. So a bunch of different birds will go to this Finch blend. So if you've been feeding Niger and you want to give the birds a little bit something extra, I would try this Finch blend. So far, everybody I know that has switched over to it has not gone back. So it gives them the Niger seed, which they love, but then also those ground up sunflower hearts. And that just goes into your typical Niger seed feeder. So the Finch blend, if you feed that, if you're switching to it, you don't need to change your feeder or anything like that. It'll just go into your Niger feeder. You want to make sure that you keep your Niger seed fresh. We also get a lot of questions about people who haven't been seeing goldfinches recently. And usually the number one reason for that is that the seed is not fresh. It can go bad after 2 or 3 months. So you want to make sure that your seed is fresh and that the feeder is clean. So having a Niger feeder that is easy to clean is really important, because it can get moldy. If you've ever had a Niger feeder before that's a tube like this, you've probably noticed that it can get moldy around the base. So we have a whole bunch of different styles that are super easy to clean. Like this one, just the base pops out. So you can clean it really, really easily. You can even clean it out, shake it out every time you fill the feeder. And that can really help with the mold buildup and that kind of thing. So if you look at your feeder and there's some kind of mold or anything like that in the bottom, that can keep the finches away, and it's just not healthy for them. So you want to make sure to clean that out. That is definitely important for the birds. But yeah, so we do have Niger feeders that are easy to clean, and sunflower seed feeders and peanut feeders. So we have just about any kind of bird feeder in a style that's easy to clean. If you're having issues with keeping your feeder clean, we've got a whole bunch of different types that you can switch to in order to keep the seed a little bit more fresh. So goldfinches are definitely around all winter long. They don't migrate. They will be here all season for you to enjoy. And then red-breasted nuthatch. We've been getting a lot of reports about red-breasted nuthatches. They tend to be more common in the winter months. And here's a photo sent in by Bob of the red-breasted nuthatch at his feeder. And it looks like it's eating that finch blend. So it's a mix of the Niger and some sunflower hearts, it looks like. So the sunflower hearts that the nuthatches really like. Red-breasted nuthatches get grouped into that winter finch category when every winter there's what's called a winter finch forecast, and it's a prediction if we're going to have an eruption year where we get these birds like redpolls coming down into our area due to food scarcities. So sometimes we have what's called an eruption year, and we get birds that aren't normally here all the time in the winter. And time will tell if it's going to be an eruption year or not. They're saying it might be. We might get a little bit of an eruption. And the red-breasted nuthatches kind of get grouped into that group of birds that do have this eruptive quality where they'll show up in larger numbers than usual in certain years. And it seems to be a really good year for red-breasted nuthatches. We've been getting a lot of customers who've been seeing them at their feeders, not just one or two, but they might have several of them all congregating to their feeders. So that's pretty cool. The red-breasted nuthatches, like in the photo here, they'll eat sunflower hearts. They like suet. They'll eat the peanuts. They really seem to like sunflower hearts. That seems to be the thing they go for. And this is what the sunflower hearts look like. It's just the insides of the sunflower seed, and that can go in your typical sunflower feeder. A lot of people like the sunflower hearts because there's no shells on it, so you don't have to worry about cleaning up after it, or you don't have to worry about your pets if you've got pets that are eating the seed that's on the ground, or the shells if they're going after that. The sunflower hearts are a good way to kind of get around that because they don't leave any kind of residue. And if they do fall on the ground, they get eaten really, really quickly by either birds or squirrels or something like that. So red-breasted nuthatch. I'm curious if any of you guys have been getting red-breasted nuthatches. I'd love to know. You can put it in the comments there if you've been seeing them. So it looks like it's going to be a good year for them, at least here so far. Dark-eyed juncos are back. So people are starting to report dark-eyed juncos. I've yet to see one though at my feeders, but they're definitely around. People have been sending in photos and reporting dark-eyed juncos. They are in the sparrow family, and they will come to feeders, but they tend to be on the ground. So you'll probably see them around the ground of your feeders, hopping around, eating the seeds that have fallen out of the feeders. They like sunflower hearts, sunflower seeds. They'll eat millet. So they eat a variety of different things. They're all gray. They've got a little white belly and a pink bill. So if you've seen dark-eyed juncos, again, you can put it in the comments and let everybody know. So here's a photo of a dark-eyed junco sent in by Bob. Mark sent in this photo here of another dark-eyed junco. So they are definitely making their way into the area. They're a bird that we have here in the winter months, but not so much in the spring and summer. We do get a little bit of junco activity, but not too much. It's kind of uncommon to see them here in the spring and summer, but they're common in the winter months. So this is south for them for the winter. Another bird you might see more now at your feeders, especially at your Niger feeders, are pine siskins. They will sometimes join flocks of goldfinches, and they kind of look like goldfinches. They're the same size. They're kind of the same color too, but they have more streaking on them. They're more striped. So keep an eye out for pine siskin as well. And they have a very sharp beak. If you look at the bill of this bird here, it's really, really sharp. It comes to a point. So that's another kind of distinguishing characteristic there of the pine siskin. So you might see them in your goldfinch group. So if you've got a feeder full of goldfinches, take an extra look because you might have a pine siskin mixed in with the group. Tree sparrows are going to be more common as we get into the colder months. They're another bird that we have here when it gets chilly out. And they have that chestnut cap on the top of their head. But look at its bill. Again, if we're talking about some distinguishing characteristics of birds, the tree sparrow has what's called a bicolored bill. The top of it is black and the bottom is yellow. So it's two colors. So that's a distinguishing characteristic there of the tree sparrow. Another winter bird. Birds like the chipping sparrow that look kind of similar, they are on their way out. They're going to be smaller also than the tree sparrow. And the tree sparrow is coming in. So we've got different sparrow species that you might see, including something like this. This is called a fox sparrow. This is, you might see one under your feeder. I had one once, not super common in the backyard, but as they're migrating through, they're looking for food. So you just might happen to see one. This is a pretty large sparrow. They're really kind of like a chestnut or more of a like a rusty type of color, and they're quite large. So you'll definitely notice the size difference if you do have this bird under your feeder. It's pretty striking. They're much bigger than, say, like your typical house sparrow. So this is what's called a fox sparrow, usually on the ground. If you've got shrubs in your backyard, you can find them under shrubs sometimes looking for food. They tend to kind of flick leaves around. If you think of the flicker, the woodpecker, the flicker that will flick leaves around in order to find food, these fox sparrows kind of do that same thing. White-throated sparrow, people are reporting them coming to their feeders, and again, underneath their feeders, bopping around on the ground, picking up seeds. And this photo was sent in by Mark, who said spotted 3 white-throated sparrow at Mendon Ponds. They seem to be back now, and yes, they are. You can tell it's a white-throated sparrow because most of the time they do have that bright white patch underneath their chin, and then they've got that yellow patch right by their eye, in between their bill and their eye. Another bird that looks similar is going to be the white-crowned sparrow. This is going to be bigger than your white-throated sparrow. They're an overall very gray color, and they're not going to have that bright white throat or that yellow patch in between their bill and their eye. They just have that bright black and white crown on top of their head. And another bird in the sparrow family, the eastern towhee. Not totally common in the winter, but people do get them at their feeders. Again, food is kind of scarce, and as they're hungry, they tend to come to areas that they might not normally feed from, bird feeders being one of them. Here's an eastern towhee. That photo was taken by Mark at Mendon Ponds Park. So they've got that really striking black and white coloration. The females are more brown. So here, this looks like a male here because the head is very black, but the females are more of a brownish color. And the adults have that very red eye, which is another striking characteristic there of the eastern towhee. So you never know, you might just happen to get one of those underneath your feeders too. And I love this set of photos that Mark sent, and these are more photos sent in by Mark, and I learned something new. I never knew that a group of cormorants was called a gulp. So that was my new fact of the day. And this series of photos here shows a huge flock of cormorants. So these are double-crested cormorants, and Mark says a gulp of cormorants at Irondequoit Bay probably saw roughly 200 to 300. So they're probably grouping up to go further south, although we do have cormorants that are here all winter long. So if you're going out to look for long-tailed ducks or any kind of duck migration, you'll probably see some cormorants out there too. They're not as common in the winter, but I see them in the winter all the time. You might see 1 or 2 mixed in with some ducks. And you can see why they can be such an issue with fishermen. They eat so many fish. So they're kind of the bane of the existence to local fishermen, the cormorants. But look at this photo here of a huge group of cormorants at Irondequoit Bay. Really neat capture there that was sent in by Mark. And then if you are looking kind of towards the sky, you might still see some turkey vulture. I've noticed there are some turkey vultures still around, soaring about. And here's another photo sent in by Mark of a turkey vulture at Irondequoit Bay. So they will be going south for the winter. We really don't see them here during the winter months. It would be pretty rare to see a turkey vulture once we really get into the cold temperatures. But they are still around in some smaller numbers. And here's a photo of one here. Some other birds of prey that you can see. We have bald eagle here all year round. Here's a red-tailed hawk. You can find them here all year round as well. And rough-legged hawk will start to come in. Again, this is south for them for the winter. They breed way up north in the Arctic, in the tundra, and they'll come down here where it's nice and toasty for them in the wintertime. They're called rough-legged hawks because they have feathers that go all the way down their legs. And so that's a really good adaptation they have to survive in those really cold temperatures. And they're about the same size as a red-tailed hawk. So they can often be, it can sometimes be hard to tell the difference between the two. And rough-legged hawks have different color morphs too. So they don't always look like this photo here. They can be much darker in coloration, but this is kind of a typical rough-legged hawk coloration that you might see, with this really dark belly here, and then these dark patches on their wrists. Whereas the red-tailed hawk have the brown patches that they call them dirty armpits, that they're right alongside their head. They're right along the base of the wing. And then they tend to have this belly band here, this kind of speckly belly band as well. So we get a lot of questions about hawk identification, which can be pretty difficult. But the red-tailed hawk, that's a really distinguishing characteristic there, that they have that little band there on their belly, and then they've got those dirty armpits. And of course, if it's an adult, they'll have that bright red tail, but that's not the case with the juveniles. So other birds you'll start to see, as far as birds of prey, you'll probably experience this in your backyard this winter if you're feeding birds: Cooper's hawks and sharp-shinned hawks. So in the winter especially, they are more common in people's backyards. They do eat birds pretty regularly, and in the winter months, they're more common than they are other times of the year, which makes sense because the other prey items that they will eat, when it's warmer out, aren't around in the same numbers that they are during the warmer months. So, for example, snakes and small mammals. While small mammals are still out, once there's snow cover, they tend to burrow under the snow and go in that subnivean layer between the snow and the ground. There can be a gap there, and they tunnel through that. So they're pretty protected. As your songbirds at your bird feeder, that's not quite the case. They're pretty exposed. They're pretty open for predation. So you might just happen upon a Cooper's hawk or a sharp-shinned hawk going after the birds at your feeder, which can be kind of distressing. But keep in mind that predators are a sign of a healthy ecosystem. So it is a good sign if you do have predators around, including these hawks that will go after songbirds. So Cooper's hawk and sharp-shinned hawk, they're often they can be often hard to identify, again, to figure out the difference between the two. This is them in their adult plumage. The juveniles are brown, and they can look a lot like each other. The Cooper's hawk is going to be the larger of the two. Cooper's hawks also have kind of a more square head. They have what they call a fierce eye, like they look really mean. And you can kind of see that in the photo here. And then the sharp-shinned hawks are smaller, so they're quite small. They can be as small as, say, a blue jay. So if you see a really, really small bird of prey, it's probably a sharp-shinned hawk. If it's larger, it's probably going to be a Cooper's hawk, as far as, birds in your backyard that are going after your feeder birds. So these two, you'll probably have some kind of an experience with them this winter if you do have your bird feeders up. So some other birds that you can find right now in the area: ruby-crowned kinglet. If you see little birds hopping around in a tree or in a shrub and they're kind of hard to pinpoint because they're moving around so fast, could still be warblers. There are some warblers still flowing through the area, but probably it's going to be some kind of a kinglet, probably going to be a ruby-crowned kinglet. You don't always see the ruby patch on the top of their head, but in this photo here that Mark sent in, you can definitely see that little red patch on the top of their head. So this is a ruby-crowned kinglet. We also have what are called golden-crowned kinglets. So you can find both of those now here in the upstate New York area. Here's another photo sent in by Mark of a golden-crowned kinglet, and you can see that golden patch on the top of its head. Warblers, I just kind of mentioned that there are still some warblers flowing through. And here's a photo, again, sent in by Mark, of a yellow-rumped warbler. And you can see how it gets its name. It's got that yellow patch on its rump. Sometimes it can be hard to see it, but depending on the position that the bird is in, if you get it in the right position, it's super easy to see and easy to identify with that bright yellow patch there. A couple other creatures, non-birds that you might find out in your yard right now. This is one that I've seen crawling around. This is the woolly bear caterpillar. So this is a caterpillar that hatches in the fall. So that's why you'll find them now as opposed to the earlier months. So the larva emerges from the egg in the fall and will spend the winter as a caterpillar, where it will literally freeze solid. And there's stories of where, depending on the size of the band of that kind of orangish band that the woolly bear has, if it's small or if it's large, it can predict the winter. There's really not any truth to that, unfortunately. As the caterpillar grows, so does that band, that orangish colored band. And unfortunately, it's not a predictor of the weather in any way. But you might see these guys crawling around in your yard. The larvae will feed on grasses, so they are a pretty common backyard insect. And we often see the caterpillar, but it's not super common to know what the adult looks like. So I thought I would show you what the adult looks like. They turn into this large moth called the Isabella tiger moth, which is pretty striking as well. So this is what they look like in their adult form, which would be more in the spring and the summertime that you would see this insect out there. So and then finally, some other creature that you might see still, although they're about to hibernate, are garter snakes. They're kind of slowing down, but they are all kind of congregating. They spend the winter in what are called hibernaculums, where they all group up together, and there can be hundreds, if not thousands, of snakes, which could be probably terrifying to some of you, but they will all group together to spend the winter, and they will emerge once it gets warmer out. They're cold-blooded, so as the temperatures drop, they tend to slow down. Takes them longer to digest things, but you might still see them around. I saw a couple out last weekend, definitely moving slow, but they are about to hibernate. So they will spend the winter usually under the ground in some kind of a rocky type of substrate. And that's called a hibernaculum, where you get a whole bunch of snakes, sometimes mixed species, all together, cuddled up for the winter time. So that's everything I have for you guys today. Thank you for watching. If you have any questions or comments, you can put those in the comments section here. We'll see who's on. Bob is on. He says, been spending the morning cleaning windows and putting up transparent decals to prevent window strikes. Blue jays are eating my black oil sunflower seeds. I've been having a lot of white-breasted nuthatches and occasionally a red-breasted nuthatch. Also lots and lots of tufties, the tufted titmouse, and black-capped chickadees. Heard a white-throated sparrow yesterday morning, but I haven't seen it yet. So Bob's getting a really good diversity there of birds at his feeders. The sparrows, both kinds of nuthatches. They're eating the sunflower seeds. We get questions a lot about what types of seeds you should be feeding the birds in the winter. Of course, you want to feed them the black oil sunflower seed. That's going to give you the biggest diversity out of any one type of seed. The peanuts are awesome. Any kind of Niger seed mix, and then of course suet. So if you have all of those, you really have your bases covered. Another question we get is there a way to keep the birds are eating so much. Is there a way to kind of slow them down? There's really not, but one thing that you can do is, I like these seed logs. Like this one is called Flaming Hot Feast. It's mixed with hot pepper so the squirrels don't eat it. It takes the birds longer to go through these, to eat these. So if you're going through a ton of seed, you can put those out and they just last longer. So whereas I'm filling my feeders every day, the seed logs, depending on the size, they can last like a week or two, at least in my yard. And so the birds, they'll still get their food, but it just takes them longer to go through. So something to keep in mind. And then you don't have to fill your feeders as often. So if we start to get snow and it's tough for you to go out and get to your feeders, having these seed logs are nice because it takes them longer to go through, so you don't have to refill as often. So thank you for your report there, Bob. And Bob sent in lots of photos, so that's always fun to see what he's got. Margaret is on, and she says, good morning, all. I'm also seeing lots of white-breasted nuthatches in Irondequoit. also have a very funny blue jay. I call him Mr. Picky. He will pick up and put down several peanuts in a row until he finds the one that's just right. So yeah, blue jays do that. Chickadees do that too. If you ever go to Mendon Ponds and you're feeding them out of your hand, you might notice that they pick up the seeds and put them down, pick them up and put them down. They actually weigh them to see which is heavier. So that's what they're doing there. They will weigh it and pick the one that it has the most weight to it. So he is being picky, and for good reasons. Why not? Why waste all that energy to get a little peanut? So he's going for the largest peanut that he can find. Can't blame him. Randy is on. He's saying good morning. He says titmouse has been visiting. Their call sounds like a chickadee with a higher pitch. Yeah, they've got a call that sounds like they're saying Peter, like Peter, Peter, Peter over and over again. It is a high-pitched little whistle. So it sounds like a lot of people have been getting the tufted titmouse in their yards. Duster is on. She says, good morning. Margaret also says, I've been overrun with grackles and finally picked up some safflower seed from you this week. Has slowed them down some. Yeah, so if you're having lots of grackles, they are probably all grouping up to go south for the winter. So it would be rare to see grackles here in the wintertime. They do go south. So it's probably a temporary thing, but yeah, they can really decimate your feeders really, really quickly, and they don't like the safflower seeds. So that is something you can feed. I actually have a safflower seed log right here. I was talking about those seed logs, and I always keep one safflower seed log out too because the cardinals really like it, and the sparrows, I get a ton of sparrows, but this seems to be their least favorite thing. So they'll eat it if that's their only choice, but they go to other things first, and they leave the safflower seed alone for at least for a while. So I have food for the cardinals all the time, and the sparrows kind of go elsewhere. House finches really like this too, but yeah, you won't get grackles on this. You really won't get starlings either. So if you're overrun with starlings, which are here all year round, you can feed safflower seed, and they really don't go for that too. So that's something else that you can do. Stephanie is on. She says we have titmice, white-breasted nuthatches, chickadees, jays, cardinals, finches, tons and tons of sparrows and pigeons. Yep. Plus occasional hairy, downy, and red-bellied woodpeckers. So Stephanie has a really good diversity there of birds at her feeders, including the cast of characters we were talking about earlier, the nuthatches, the titmice, the cardinals, the blue jays. So she's got a whole bunch. Ed is on, and he says seeing a lot of woolly bears down near Mendon Ponds Park, moving them off the road when they're out there. Yep, they tend to, you'll see them probably going over the trails. They kind of bumble about over the trails. He says lots of garter snakes too. One was working its way through the garage, and he got moved out to the garden. So sounds like the garter snake might have been looking for a place to spend the winter there, hanging out in the garage, and Ed moved him out to the garden. So looks like that's everybody's comments and questions for the day. Thank you guys for tuning in. If you are around, we have our plant sale going on today. A lot of plants only $1, so most of everything is just $1, so you can get some really good deals today at our plant sale with Michael Hainan. He is out front outside the store, and we will be back on Tuesday with another broadcast. So until then, enjoy your weekend, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.